this is the title of our presentation, Working Towards Inclusivity. Let's start with the syllabus. And we joined this group and we participated in this intervention, all of us as faculty, because we were really interested in how is it that we can take the instruments we have in our classroom, the things that we're already using, to make it more inclusive. Our school has a high number of students who are Hispanic and African American. Actually, we are a minority serving institution and Hispanic serving institution. And more than half of our students are actually minority students. So building tools that actually are more inclusive and make our students feel more comfortable, and that the classroom is a space where they can really share all their ideas was quite important to us. And this is the idea behind starting this particular process. So here is in a snapshot how the intervention looked. 10 faculty members from different departments. And I want to stress that this wasn't something that just some professors in English or social sciences, psychology joined, but also we have people from math. I share with you that I'm a professor actually of molecular biology. So we had a broad range of interests and disciplines within this group of faculty. We met monthly, and you can see in the timeline indicated here that at every session, we tackle different aspects of the syllabus or curriculum. What is it that we would like to change? What is it that we could change, and how? It was important for us to also find ways to make these changes as we were working through this workshop. We brought in a syllabus that we wanted to work on, and we had guest speakers. There were readings that we shared ahead of time. The person leading the workshop actually shared this with us ahead of time to help us build the type of knowledge that would actually allow us to make those changes. Because a big part of this process was not only to make changes into our syllabi, but it was also the change in the way of looking at materials and the change in the way of teaching or pedagogy that could also be brought about by, you know, this exchange from different faculty that had similar interests. So if we go through the timeline, you can see that we started by establishing a space in which we understood the norms that were happening, what could be shared, the voice of everyone. We actually came, I was taken just by the beginning of the process, in which we were already making changes on how we share materials and information. We talk about the possibility that these changes actually became sort of a pedagogical shift in what we were doing. We talk about connections with the students. You can see it there. I'll share with you some of the outcomes of these conversations in a couple of slides. We talk about assignments. We talk about how to use extra credits or extra materials within the classroom to promote this sense of inclusion. We talk about, you know, the policies and the resources and how to provide feedback and open spaces into the classroom. We actually talk about class and race and inclusivity and how that affected our view of the materials we selected. We had a whole session in which we discussed microaggressions and, you know, how to address it within the classroom environment. And then we talk about assessment and share what we have learned and what we hope to do going forward. So this was a very productive and long process that we kind of engage in very deeply. And even now that the year has ended, we continue to share our experiences across, you know, now even across other institutions. So here is an example of how a syllabi looked before we started this process and after. And just want to highlight that, of course, there is tons of information that you want to convey when putting together materials for a particular course. There might be many different ways in which you have this information or share it with the students. What we learn from this process is that there are many ways in which we can make material more accessible to students. And also that in the process of doing that, we are thinking more and more about what is it that we're using and how we can engage the students in these materials and make them a part of this process. So here are some examples how to make us more accessible to a student, how the instructor can be more accessible, how the instructions and what to do can be something that is encouraging, and how we can highlight specific goals for our course or, you know, our teaching of a particular unit of materials, for instance. Just creating a certain visual aspect of it. Always telling the students what is our goal, what is it that we want to accomplish, and how is it that we are accomplishing that. Similarly, you can see in this slide how we can take information that is already there. So basically it's the same information on both sides, but how this information can be shifted and put together in a way that actually brings individuals into the conversation versus keeping them away from it, right? So in one end, we have paragraphs with tons of detailed information, which is important to have. But also here on the other side, we have visuals that actually provide a more clear and a snapshot of the information, right? So what are the assessment items that are included in this course and how much do they really weight? So the numbers tell that story, but this slide obviously tells that story in a more conveying way. And we know people are learners of different kinds, so visuals also address the issue of inclusion, as some individuals can look at this and immediately get the information, and they might look at a paragraph and feel like, oh, this is, you know, something that now I have to go through. So it's thinking about more than one way of providing this information and also making it more accessible to those that are receiving it. So what is it that we learn, right, in our conversations, our readings, and our discussions? We like the idea that low-stake assignments should be used in the classroom because this allows students to openly share their experience and share how they're connecting with the material. We like the idea of considering less punitive wording, something that actually it takes some time to get adjusted to, but we find that and from the conversations with the students that also visited in our workshop turn out to be something they really appreciate and make them feel closer to the material. We talk about sharing resources, information about resources that exist in the college, resources that are relevant to students and relevant to the content and the course. We talk about the real applications of the description of why are they taking this course, just not another course in the list, but what is it that they can actually get out of this course that they can apply to their everyday life. We talk about finding scholars that are people of color, that are women, that are from other diverse origins, that could share visions of the content that are unique to them and that can speak to all those that are in the room. And we talk about having assignments that also address diverse perspectives, right? So these were the main things that we felt like our experience really let us take with us. So I'm going to give now, Kim is going to continue.
Great, thanks, Lissette. So I just wanted to share fairly briefly a few testimonials from faculty participants, which really overlap a lot with the takeaways that Lissette just described in terms of common themes, things that we learned. So I changed the content of my syllabus to be more inclusive. I included images of women and people of color who have made significant contributions to psychological research. Then to the right, I modified my wording to create instructions that speak more directly to students and include several authors of different backgrounds to help students see that content is not unique to one group. We discussed a lot this concept of decolonizing the syllabus, and we'll describe that even more as our presentation goes on, as we have our activity. But this idea that inclusion can mean the way you talk to students, can mean the background of the authors of the readings. It can mean the way you talk about resources, the way you talk about extra credit, the way you talk about sort of everyone in this together. So here down the bottom left, I changed the language in my syllabus to focus on my desire to create a collaborative learning environment. So this idea that the syllabus too is the first thing that students see, and it's your first opportunity to communicate with students. This seminar helped me address the COVID-19 transition with empathy and compassion, and to keep all options open to students who need to make up the work, access our class differently, or participate in alternative ways. So there were a lot of themes that were sort of in common: offering extra credit, talking about student hours rather than office hours, adding these resources, creating a direct connection with students. Could we do the next slide? So one thing that happened that we certainly did not intend at the beginning of the year was, our transition to distance learning because of COVID. And as our group met remotely, we found ourselves talking about inclusivity and the way that our changes to the syllabus sort of prepared us to be more empathetic to students who needed accommodations, to really consider accessibility as students deal with issues of technology, of illness in their family, of needing to juggle work with school, all of these things that John Jay students were already doing, but sort of the COVID-19 exacerbating all of these inequalities and also challenges for them. So some things that we did beyond the syllabus that were fueled by the presentation in light of COVID, we're offering students ways of participating without Zoom video or audio. So sort of becoming attentive to the idea that there was access involved, not just students not wanting to turn their videos on. Offering flexibility of modalities for conferences. So I offered my students, I was teaching an English composition class, the opportunity to talk to me on the phone via a text chat or via a Zoom video conference, just because a lot of them did have a number of different issues in their lives that, that really affected the way that they could access their learning. And this continues. Having moral support check-ins rather than pretending everything was normal. And this continues to come up a lot when software crashes, when things get in the way, when, life intervenes. Offering students access to campus and to citywide resources, and we'll discuss resources in more depth in a little bit. Creating new vehicles for content delivery, such as visual, audio, video, and other multimedia means of explaining and providing guidance. So Lissette showed us, some of these wonderful ways of reimagining how you provide information on the syllabus. That is now translating to our online courses and distance learning environments, thinking about how to create infographics, PowerPoint presentations, short videos for students, thinking about the ways that they learn, the way that they access information, and what are different things that they can learn and use that maybe they can rewatch a video or return to a visual. And then finally, creating new types of learning assessments to achieve learning outcomes. So again, like sort of thinking outside the box of testing to think about more meaningful assessments, synthesis of different kinds of information. Okay, so with that, I'll turn it over to Giazu.
Thank you. So we are going to do an exercise, right? And to do so, Lissette, could you please stop sharing the screen? And also, thank you so much. Could you please give me the permissions to be a host too and to breakout rooms? So to do this exercise, right, first I'm going to start by sharing what we, like exactly what we are going to do, okay, and what we did too, right? So I hope you are looking at, yes. So this is an exercise about how to decolonize our syllabus, right? And this is what we are going to do today, right? So we have a regular syllabus. This is an example of sociology, right? So it's a regular syllabus where we have like regular people. The exercise consists like you are going to take a look at your syllabus, right? And you are going to start looking for the pictures. So in this case, we have here Karl Marx, right? So I go to Google and then I copy paste the image of Karl Marx. And then I go and keep going for Emil Durkheim, for Max Weber, for all the people, right, that conform my sociological class. And then I have to reflect, what do I see? So what do I see? It is that they are all men, mostly they are white. We have a couple of Jewish people too, but that's it. At some point in my syllabus, I have Du Bois, but it is just like one session and that's it, right? So this is going to be an active process where you actually are vocal and explicitly say and do to try to use your readings and try to diversify your syllabus. So you can pass from a lot of just white people and you can actually go into this is a new rebrand course that I teach in classical sociological theory, right? So as you can see, we have women of color, we have women as well, right? And that doesn't mean that I just stop teaching about Karl Marx and I stop teaching about like the main people, right? In psychology, we have to teach about Freud. And yeah, that is, I mean, we do have to do, but that doesn't mean we're going to erase them, right? What does it mean is like we need to actually kind of evolve, like try to look for them in an effort to actually do it. So we are going to do this exercise, okay? I'm going to do some groups. Let me see. I think we can do it. We can do it in here with everyone. What do my team think about it? Can we do it in here? Right? Okay. So what we're going to do then is I'm going to share this link that we have. Okay. This is a PDF of the exercise that I am proposing, and we are going to work on it. So I'm putting on the chat. Let me know if you do not see it on the chat, has to be on your right. Okay, if you can click that link, okay, it's going to lead you to Google Drive. Please feel free to unmute yourself and tell me if you can see it.
I see it.
Perfect, thank you so much. So there you go, we have step by step, okay? And then let's put the hands on work, right? Feel free to open your syllabus. If you're working with a textbook, go ahead, right? Look at the title, who's the authors, who are the editors, right? Have your name and go to any Explorer, Safari, Chrome, and Google the person. When you Google the person, you have to click for images.
We share the activity or?
Yes, we can. Yeah, thank you, Kim. Yeah, if you wanted to, yes, we can share the document on the screen. Yes, thank you. Excellent, thank you, Kim. So the steps are right there, right? Look at the readings you're planning to your class and make a list of the authors. Look for the author's pictures online, right? So the easiest way is to type the name of Google Doc, okay, sorry, on Google, and look for the images, right? When you see the author, use a right click and select copy. You can open a PowerPoint, you can paste it on a Word, it doesn't matter, right? Could be great if you are like doing it as we speak, because then you could share with us your screens and you can tell us what kind of things you are looking at. We're going to give you a few moments so you have time to Google the names. One of the main ideas also about this exercise and one of the outcomes is like you can add the pictures to your syllabus. And especially now that everything is online, right? You don't have to print a super long syllabus. You can actually have the pictures of the people. So our students can look at themselves, can reflect, can see a role model, right? Can see, okay, this is the people who's producing knowledge. I can produce knowledge. So I would like to hear a little bit from the audience. I'm going to read the goals of this exercise, and then I'm going to hear from the audience, from the public. So the goals for this activity, right, is first to self-reflect on the content of your syllabus, to shorten the distance between the authors and your students. For me, this is really important when I teach any kind of scholar. I really like to talk about their lives. Who are they? If they have kids, if they were immigrants, if they changed their citizenship, if they have like, if they were transgender people, right? Because we need to acknowledge all this spectrum, right? Then use authors as role models for your students, right? Start your own reconstruction, right? We are taught to just reproduce our own knowledge. And it is super easy just to keep teaching the same thing over and over again, right? So the hard part is about doing this, but you have to compare, like it is not hard if you compare to the everyday life struggle from our students or from other people, right? The last goal is to increase the presence of people of color and other minorities or other identities in your classroom, to explicitly say this person is Muslim, is Sikh, right? Like any kind of like identity markers. So I would like to hear from you. Feel free to unmute you. You can raise your hand, and we're going to stop sharing the screen. And then we are going to see this gallery view. Okay, I invite you to show your, like open your cameras if you feel comfortable with it. Remember, we are recording. And please unmute yourself and tell us, what are you looking at? What are some thoughts on this first of the exercise, this first part of the exercise where you look at the people you are teaching in your classroom? Don't be afraid if everyone is white. Don't be afraid. And if you already have people of color, go ahead. Don't worry, we all start on the same point, I promise.
Giazu, I'll speak because I had to do this exercise, and it was important because I can remember the first time that I saw this presentation, that when I saw the same exact thing with the lack of diversity, and then we began to kind of unpack right there on the screen, it really does help you to be more creative and to call on other skills that you might have. So that was my experience of seeing. I was like, oh wow, you know, I never thought of it like that. And so I think it's important to have these kinds of conversations.
Thank you, Erica.
And if I could just add also, as one of the, as Giazu mentioned, white college lecturers who are participating in this process, I am teaching human services and counseling, and I am a social worker, and my human services and counseling textbooks, which is a required textbook for the course, is written by a white male. So I didn't go and just, like we said earlier, erase that textbook. It's still a required text, but what I did was I looked up different human services professionals in history who are people of color, males, females, and then what I did was visualize naturally I put them on the syllabus to include them. And I just wrote something like, fun fact, here are all these contributors to human services. And that in itself was already inclusive. So again, we just want to emphasize the point that we're not asking you to necessarily eliminate your content. We're just asking you to be more thoughtful of how it could be more representative of the students that you're serving, right?
That is right. Thank you, Yelena. And a really important part in here is like, we don't want just to have a token people of color or scholar in your syllabus. It's not like, okay, I have all white people, but oh, hold on, I have the boys. Or oh, hold on, I have Frida Kahlo in my art class, right?
Right.
So we really need to think about how to diversify. We know it is a long process, right? I mean, the first time you can probably just switch one author. Think about the reading, go through the readings and include it. And then probably the next semester, you're going to include another one. There are so many ways where you can actually be active in this process. You can even ask your students, right? So could you please, Lissette, share again the instructions of the exercise so we can go for the next part. So now that we see how our syllabus looks like, right? And let's say that probably you have a little bit of diversity, probably you do not have, probably you have all the editors. If it's a textbook, it's 99%, like 90%, let's say, right? That is going to be about white scholars. So then this is the number 5, right? Take a look at your authors at once. How does this big picture look like? Do you see diversity? If the answer is no, let's change it. If the answer is yes, then I'm sure we can go further. Perhaps you could dig in a little bit more on the authors and look for other identity markers and details, right? That actually kind of speak to your audience, to your students, right? And finally, number 6, now the fun part, at least it's fun for me. Look for different authors to embrace diversity in your syllabus. You can change 1 or 2 the first time, right? Next semester, you can go for 2 more. If you find it difficult, I suggest you to go to the amazing librarian. At least in Georgia, we have amazing people, but I'm sure in your schools, you have also really cool people, or even just assemble an assignment. And this is super helpful, right? You can ask your students. One of the starting points in my pedagogical exercise, since I am a feminist scholar, is that my starting point is that the students, they do have knowledge, right? So if you ask them, they are going to surprise you. They are going to tell you, you know what, like, I know this author that it's super cool. I read this other author that you don't have it, right? So ask your students. You can design it as an assignment. You can design it as an extra credit. You can just open the floor for this kind of discussions in your classrooms. So it's not just about like you doing, like you can do a collective effort. And this is also sending a message. This is also telling your students, I do care and I wanted to change things, right? And acknowledge, right? Like I am certainly, as you can tell by my accent, I am a Latino professor, but I do have to acknowledge that I am a white Latina, right? And I was trained in Barcelona in Europe, so it's not the same. So you have to acknowledge and try to see what do you have in common with your students, what can you tell them about your identity and how to connect with your students. So if someone wants to share some comments about this exercise, let me see the time. Okay, probably we need to go back to let's wrap up our PowerPoint first. So yes, Jennifer, go ahead.
Thanks. You know, I'm really glad we're having this conversation because I've actually had a colleague who unfortunately, because we are all embracing this concept, but that colleague said something to the effect, oh, I'd like to focus more on quality than on these other factors. And so yes, cringeworthy, absolutely. So I had to sort of circle back and say, okay, you know, first I would start by saying, you know, obviously quality is our highest, you know, reason for why we want to do this and then move from there. But I think also having the conversation, I think just like you said, Giazu, that it's not just diversity for diversity's sake, but in fact, we are trying to find and identify varying perspectives, perhaps on the same content, on the same subject matter, so that people will begin to see the prism as opposed to, oh, we're just looking at things one way. And so just having that sort of pushback from a colleague forced me to then have that conversation with the students. So why do you think we are looking at this topic or this subject matter from so-and-so's perspectives? Or can you compare and contrast perspectives, all kinds of ways? What does this person's voice add to what we know about the content, so that our students know beyond just having diversity? Because like right now, it's a big topic, you know, but I don't want it to fade away. I want them to understand why.
Yes, I think what you're saying is super important. Thank you for saying that, because now the colonizing, it's a buzzword, and diversifying, and now, I mean, we're happy that it's trendy. We're happy that we have the spaces to discuss it, but at the same time, we have to be careful, because otherwise it's just going to be a trendy and then it's going to vanish, right? And yes, it is about like about realism and relativism, right? The debate about like, it's not just that the white people who build the knowledge, it is right or wrong. No, they do have their perspective, and we appreciate it, and we have to teach it. But there are other perspectives that we also need to teach, right? Otherwise, it is like super short, right? Yes, I think it's super important to really acknowledge and go beyond that, right? This is the baby steps, right? First time, you have to acknowledge, and you have to say, how does your syllabus look like, right? And you need to say, because if you don't say, you don't name it, it doesn't exist, right? So you have to stop this reproduction. So thank you for your comments. I really like to try to go for the sharing of the second part, because I think the next question is how we can land this exercise and these resources to our teachers, right, to our audience. So Lissette, could you please share your screen? Is it Lissette? Yes, right?
Yes, I can do that. Let me just do so as I did before.
And if you wanted to start your participation, I think it's Erica.
Yes, okay. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Here you go, Eric.
Thank you, Lissette. So one of the things that sometimes when we do this presentation, we get pushback, and I think you all are alluding to that as educators, that sometimes people are saying, oh, this can't go in my classroom. I have such a discipline that won't allow me to be able to diversify this. And so one of the things that we wanted to really emphasize is the role of the teacher in all of what can go on in the classroom, right? So they play a very pivotal role. We also know that teachers, and you do too, if you could go back, to that slide, teachers are definitely leaders, right? So the students often look to them for their expertise, for their knowledge, and also as role models, right? Teachers are also change agents. Without the teacher's leadership and guidance in this area, there's no way that we're going as a nation to be able to overcome much of the systematic racism that we encounter. I believe that teachers have to help us as a society to do that. They also motivate students. The language and the message and the kinds of words that teachers encourage or discourage students with can either be a motivator or a demotivator. And again, teachers help to facilitate tough conversations that other people aren't willing to have, because they're with the students a lot of the day. And then teachers also serve as a resource. Now, one of the things that I also want to emphasize, there are three circles here. We have teacher, we have student, and we cannot leave out our parents. Now, one of the things that is so significant about having parents is parents and teachers have a history with education in schools, right? And for some parents, it's not a good history. It may be that they struggled in school themselves. It may be that they don't speak English very well. And so now they have to go to someone who they perceive as an authority, who has all the knowledge, who knows everything about everything. And it really is incumbent upon the teacher to reach out and to make themselves available to parents at all different kinds of ways. Some parents are not very good and very well versed with technology. They don't even know what Zoom is, right? So just like we did with our students, you may have to expand the types of ways that you're willing to interact and engage with parents. It might be telephone calls, and it might not be at traditional hours. Some parents are still at work at 3 o'clock. You might have to be flexible. So we also want to encourage that. We also want to talk about in the classroom with the student. So we talked a little bit about power differentials between teacher and student. Much of that we talk about in our seminar is how to get students to communicate with us, to show that we're human, right? That we make mistakes. One of the funny things that Giazu shared with us is that students often thought we lived in penthouses or we are very wealthy, and we laughed so hard in our class because that it couldn't be further from the truth, right? So as teachers, keeping that in mind, that students have lots of perceptions about who you are, where you live, and they're curious. And when you can break down those barriers to have those kind of conversations, I mean, we have to have boundaries, of course, but where you have an opportunity to let them know and remind them. Sometimes students don't even think that or remember, or it doesn't occur to them that we went to college, that we might have struggled, that we have struggles. And depending on the level that you are at, if you're in elementary school teaching, if you're in high school, to remind students, hey, I was a student one time, and maybe sharing some of those experiences of what it was like for you when you were a student. We just want to encourage different ways that teachers can connect with both their students and their parents, and recognizing that, as we've said before, that we invite students to bring what they have from their background, from their homes, and bringing that to the classroom and allowing space for that, and that communication every single day is so important and so critical to how we're able to proceed forward. Next slide. Yelena.
Okay, so this is everything that Erica just spoke about. This is sort of building on everything that Erica said. And this is actually, I just want to give you a little bit of context behind this. Was one of our activities when we were doing the year-long workshop. Giazu asked all of the participating faculty to break out over the 2 weeks between our sessions, and to find and locate resources on campus. Again, this was for college students, and basically build our toolkit and build our resource guide that we could share with our students as part of the process of being inclusive. So when we found out about this opportunity, and we understood that our audience is going to be teachers that are teaching across different ages and classroom sizes, we wanted to be very intentional of how we can sort of apply what we've learned with college students in terms of resources to you as the audience, right? So we put together some of the things that we can do to promote, as Erica said, that teacher-student-parent relationship. And one of the things that we encourage you to do, and this is sort of like a checklist, is as you're preparing for the school year or the semester, thinking about sending a resource guide to parents that includes welcome events and just different types of, when you're having correspondence with students or with parents, or when you're having welcome events, to give sort of like a resource guide. Connecting parents to school affiliated organizations, maybe groups and clubs. For example, the town I live in, which is predominantly white and Asian, does have a pretty significant group of Black and Latino parents. And there's actually a Black Latino Parent Association that many folks in town didn't even know about, right? So having your ears open and seeking out diverse parent groups that are out there, not the typical parent association groups. Sending a personal welcome video at the beginning of the year. It could be in the comfort of your own home. It could be something that's a little bit less formal. Again, just we talked about, being human and connecting with your students and parents. That could be a suggestion. Similar to a resource guide, possibly having a newsletter, right? Connecting parents to community organizations, groups, and events. Having a newsletter, something that's not too heavy, that's not too burdensome on you. Having that template and just updating it when you can. Being inclusive in your communication with parents, right? Thinking about gender pronouns, providing a brief bio, focusing on your own ethnic background. We do that now with our syllabus. We encourage you to do that in your communication toolkits. Again, reiterating the use of representation in your communication, considering graphics, images, colors, displaying diversity and positivity. Maybe even suggesting parents to sign up for class emails, parent communication apps, help them stay connected to one another, especially right now during this pandemic. It is so isolating and so many families are going through such individual crises. If you can just sort of like show that you're thinking about them and suggesting ways that they can communicate with one another will go a long way. And then of course, encouraging your colleagues to do the same as I mentioned above. So you're not just the one outlier that's doing this, that your colleagues are sort of part of the process. So there's a system of cohesiveness, especially at your current grade level. And it'll also just be a great support system for you as a teacher. Sorry, there's a typo, but as a teacher, if you're not the only one that's doing this, your colleagues are doing this with you, it makes things a lot easier for you to build your toolkit. And just in the bottom, it says, make sure that whatever you're sending and sharing with parents is always updated, relevant, and accurate. Make sure that the websites are accurate. Make sure that the phone numbers are working phone numbers. Anything that you're sharing with parents, make sure that it's relevant, because then it just comes off as dismissive, right? Next slide. So this is something that I just put together as an example. What resources can you provide for caregivers based on what I've heard parents in my New Jersey town ask about? And again, this is just an example, and you could definitely apply to whatever is relevant for your population and your community of where you're teaching. So I want to start by saying, and we've said this before, we understand that teachers' primary job is to educate the students. But family situations, especially right now, arise. So how can you connect students to the school? So the first thing you should always do is connect the student or the family through the proper channels, right? Whether it's a school crisis counselor, social worker, guidance counselor, we understand that that should be first and foremost. But just by having these resources available as handouts, promotes a positive and inclusive environment in your classroom, right? Again, going back what Erica said, parent, teacher, student. So again, some examples, if families that have young children, siblings that you know that in the home. This is a website, New Jersey Parent Link, where they can get a lot of information about early child care. Parents needing help with special education advocacy, again, either for the student at hand or for other children in the home. You have the SPAN, the Parent Advocacy Network, right? Parents struggling to pay the rent or bills in the home. Sometimes these conversations do come up, unfortunately, and you can't avoid it. I found this website to be very, very helpful when a local parent in my town was looking to help with paying the bills, sharing that. Families who have experienced loss of home property, natural disaster, here's an organization that helps with that. And then finally, if you actually have parents that want to sort of be allies in the process of thinking about inclusivity, of thinking about, especially right now, hot topic, as we said, anti-racism, the Center for White, oh my God, it's slipping out of my head right now, but it's something like the Center for Euro-White American Studies. It's not a white supremacy organization. Please, it sounds like it, but I swear it's not. It's actually studying how white privilege and white power affects communities around us, right? And they do amazing workshops based on the Undoing Racism principles. They do amazing workshops on how how to raise anti-racist white children. So I just wanted to share this with you, again, as another example of a resource that could be shared with parents. And that's it for me.
I'm so happy you addressed that it's not a white supremacist organization.
It's a horrible title.
Now it's that blatant that we really need to tell. It is crazy, but it is a thing. We are going to share the whole, the slides as a PDF. I think Rachel can help us with that, as also the exercise and the material that we have in here. I left you my email.